Sucheta for the wonderful introduction she gave about me. I welcome all of you. I, I really welcome all of you, and with the hope that at the end of this session, at the end of the 2 hours, at least some of your doubts, at least some of the things which invariably go wrong, you would be warned about them, you would be aware of it, or if it already has gone wrong, then you would at least have some idea that how to repair it, correct it, what is the course correction, what is the next step which would be required to be taken. Now, first, I would like a response from you with respect to how many in this room are, as on date, facing recovery actions from the bank. Just you have to raise your hand so that I know which part of the four four topics which we have selected for today, which part to stress more and which to be just in a passing reference. I think nobody. Okay. Now we are talking about SMEs, the financing to SME, setting up of the SME, the government's role towards SME, and what are the differences between a loan, a loan taken for personal consumption like housing loan, car loan, other consumer durable loans, and a business loan. The difference goes back to the industrial policy. This nation, when it was formed, the forefathers at that time, they had certain goals which might have changed today. But broadly speaking, there has always been an existing industrial policy of the Union. The first one came in 48, the second one came into 56, after that 91, and since 91 we are waiting for the next one, which is due anytime. Those who have been tasked with setting those industrial policies are maybe doing their work. It would come. As of today, what we have is 1956 and 1991. Why I'm talking about this industrial policy? Because the entire concept of project financing finds its roots in the industrial policy. There, the goal of industrial development of the nation had MSME, as it was called earlier as SSI units, as well as cottage industry, that formed a bedrock of the entire plan for industrial development of the country. If you just go back a little bit, 20, 30 years back, every other ministry, every other policy statement from the government, it always used to be addressed towards MSME, SSI sector. Fortunately or unfortunately, during the last decade or so, we see that the attention to MSME sector is completely lacking. Why? Maybe the new businesses have come, entire focus has shifted to startups, stand-ups, sit-ups, everything. So the MSME sector, which always used to form the bedrock of the nation, the industrial development, just drive from Mumbai on any side of Mumbai, you would see all the small scale industries. Just go out of Mumbai towards Gujarat, we have same clusters, Delhi, any city you name in India. I am from Malegaon, as was introduced earlier. I am from Malegaon, and from Mumbai to Malegaon via Nasik is around 300 kilometers on the national highway number 3. For the past 6 or 7 years, I haven't seen a single new factory on that road. Prior to that, there always used to be some factory being built, being completed, being inaugurated, foundation stone being laid. So it's not that the entire, and what has happened, not only that, the focus of the government is entirely missing from the sector. The bankers have completely turned their backs on the MSME sector. I'll get into my details, because at this stage I would like to give one small example. A young entrepreneur set up a dehydration unit. That dehydration unit, due to various reasons, I would not go into the reasons, suffered the setback, financial setback. Okay. After suffering this financial setback, the banker on the 90th day, 91st day, the banker marked the account as NPA. On the 92nd day, 13(2) notice under Securitization Act was issued. There are a plethora of RBI circulars, laws, industrial policy, which mandate the banker to first have a look at a possibility of revival. Somebody has to go down there, somebody has to sit down with the entrepreneur, somebody has to see whether that business has really turned bad. A 90-day deadline, it looks good, it appears good on the paper. It may be necessary also, because we trust the brains of RBI. It may be necessary. I'll not go into that. But for MSME industry, this 90-day deadline is not at all required. It is completely unwarranted. The RBI learned its lesson the hard way. So on 8th of February this year, we had the new RBI circular, which has directed the bankers that for the MSME sector, the 90-day NPA deadline should be extended to 180 days. Now, one would expect the bankers to follow. They don't. The bankers are not following the 180-day norms. The accounts which have been marked as NPA based on the earlier 90-day guideline remain in NPA. The recovery actions are still going on. So that's the kind of apathy which we are seeing from the entire system. Whereas a few decades, I would say, not years, a few decades back, getting into SME was like right now getting into startups. The atmosphere was there. Right now, even the atmosphere is missing. On the contrary, what is happening is people are being branded as dishonest, willful defaulters. I'll come to all those topics. But just to give briefly that the criterias on which the bank marks a person or a company or an account as willful defaulter, the criterias, there are certain items which every entrepreneur, every SME invariably does, commits unknowingly. Those are the criterias. Besides the criteria, there is a lengthy procedure involved before declaring someone a willful defaulter. What we are seeing is the criterias are followed scrupulously while the procedure is given a go by. So out of the 7-8 criteria, if you fit into even one, the banker is the first one to rush and declare you as a willful defaulter. Why, what should be done, we'll come to that later. Now at this point, while all this industrial financing, the grounds, the difference in a personal loan, as I said, you're borrowing money for your self consumption. Well, you are setting up an SME, you are borrowing money for the economic development of the entire nation. You are borrowing the money to fulfill the economic goals which have been set up by the ruling class. As a nation, the economic goals are being fulfilled by SME in large parts of the country. Now, because once you set up an SME, setting up an SME or a greenfield unit in any field is not easy. Buying the land, converting into NA, then availing of the electricity supply, then taking the local if it is in the rural part, then taking the NOC from that Gram Panchayat guy, this. So all these things, they do take your time, money at every stage. You deal with people, a lot of things, a lot of stuff happen. But once you start that SME, you provide employment to a lot of people depending upon the size of your unit. Then you pay excise, you pay sales tax, you pay all other indirect direct taxes. Even after that, if you manage to earn some money, then you also pay income tax. So borrowing for an SME is basically is for the entire ecosystem. It is for the entire society. You're not borrowing it for your self consumption. So there is no shame if your unit or any SME unit or any SME business fails. You are into the business. The business is bound to fail. A lot of businesses fail. What is worrying is the stigma which comes with failure. Most of us come from low middle class or upper middle class society. We hear talks, oh, that neighbor, his unit has failed, उसने बैंक का पैसा डुबा दिया. It is kind of a stigma which should not be there. It should be just like, it should just like be like the corporates which fail in a business, they would go on to a new business. The same culture, the same point of view should be there when looking at the SME entrepreneurs. And for that, we need to start from ourselves. A loan being NPA is not end of the world. A loan being NPA should not be held against you, against your abilities, against your intentions, against your honesty. No. A loan has gone bad, you have invested the money in the business, and the business, for various factors, internal, outwards, the factors which are beyond your control, it has gone bad. There is no shame in it, unless you have not siphoned off the money or you have not just done some kind of a fraud. Otherwise, most of the businesses, I'm yet to see a single case of an MSME who has committed a fraud with the bankers. Because the nature of activity, the nature of MSME, it requires entrepreneurship. And an entrepreneur, by nature, is not a fraud. He is always a person who believes in his idea. He puts in everything, whatever he has. He mortgages his house. Most of the SME people, they mortgage their houses. So somebody who's mortgaging his house would not commit a fraud with the bank. So the difference lies there. The difference is, and there are any number of RBI guidelines to take care of every situation which an entrepreneur faces at every stage of his project, at every stage of the life of his business, of his industry. Nobody reads it, nobody tells us, nobody follows, even if we go and tell them that look, the RBI guidelines say so and so. You have to first try for the restructuring. You have to see, you have to appoint an experts committee to my unit. That experts committee has to reach to an opinion that yes, this business has become unviable. Only then you can either declare my account as NPA or you can initiate your recovery proceedings. So the difference between both the things is, in the personal loan, it is for your self-consumption. If you don't pay, you need your property, your assets needs to be sold and the money recovered. Over here, it is not the case. It doesn't pay anybody. Now, one particular issue I wanted to talk about is the third one: guidelines on adequate security for industrial finance. What happens is, as an entrepreneur, when we go to seek finance from the bank, when you are setting up a project, submitting your application, submitting your financials, submitting your uh, projections, profitability projections, turnover projections, submitting it to the bank and availing of the loan is a tedious process. It takes about minimum 6 months, I would say, as on date. By that time, you have already invested a lot of money into that business. Either you have already purchased a land, if you had the land, you have already converted it into industrial use. If you have already converted into industrial use, you have already started construction of the plant, the building. So you have invested so much over there, and mentally and physically you are completely invested in the project. At that time, every day's, every week's delay in the bank sanction, that puts you back, that makes you impatient. Then you accept whatever are the terms which the banker dictates you. You go to the bank, you tell the banker that now look, I have already placed order for the machinery. One of my machine is being imported from Germany. I need to send the payment and I have relied upon you. You told us, you gave us a time of 3 months. Now it's almost 6 months. I've already put in all the money. At that time, the banker says, okay, your proposal is not going through. The security requirement is more. Then you say, okay, I'll put my house also, I have 2 plots also. Then you give additional extra collateral securities which are basically not required. The banker tells you that unless you give 100%, 150% security, we will not be sanctioning the loan. In fact, the Reserve Bank of India, in its guidelines since the year 2012, and earlier to that, there was one guideline in 2004 also, they have completely scrapped the mandatoriness of collateral security. They have left it to the board of the individual bank. They have left it to their own wisdom. They have left it to for them to determine what should be the collateral security. So it would help a lot if an entrepreneur at the very beginning of his project, when the loan is being sanctioned, if he insists and says nothing doing, 30%, 20%, I'm giving you only this security. Because as far as security is concerned, you are setting up a unit, you are creating an asset, you are creating an asset which would generate profits. If you leave out the last 3 to 4 years, other than the last 3 to 4 years, over the last 4 to 5 decades, the price of land has always gone in one way, that is up. So if you have borrowed money in 2000, you have set up a unit, purchased a land, made a construction on it, purchased the machinery, then up to 2010, 2018, the price of that land itself would go much higher. So where is the need for the banker to ask for collateral security? Because his dues, if we take a general project, if 100 rupees are required, out of that the banker says we will provide 75, you contribute 25, general talk. Now if 100 rupees are being put into the business and the banker is financing only 75 rupees, where is the need for additional security? There is no need. And in some of the RBI guidelines, the RBI has specifically asked the bankers that please review your policies. Do not insist, at least from the MSMEs, you do not insist. I would be referring to three documents, three circulars of RBI, which I would urge everybody of you to read, because that would contain almost everything which the bankers really don't do and which we as entrepreneurs don't insist on. Because the entrepreneur approaches the bank, there is always an intermediary. The intermediary, most cases, is chartered accountant. A chartered accountant would normally, I mean, you people may have a different experience, but a chartered accountant would always be a facilitator than a guide or somebody who can guide you at that nascent stage of your industry, the finance. From that arises an issue of underfinancing, which is the single most factor behind failure of MSME industry. The all the finances are provided based upon a project report that you submit. The project report is prepared by the chartered accountant. The chartered accountant has a software in which he puts in his figures to get those ratios right. He goes to the bank and tells him, look, all the ratios are correct. He has not paid attention to the business. He has not paid attention to what would be the turnover of the business, what would be the capacity of the business, how much profits the business would generate. What he does is, how much profitability, what ratios are acceptable to the banker, what fits into the bank's norms, he would submit that project report to the bank and avail of the finance. You would say, sir, इतने में तो नहीं होगा, I would at least need a 25 lakh rupees more. The chartered accountant would say, no, आज ले लो, थोड़े दिन के बाद मैं enhancement करवा दूँ. I'll have that enhancement. Now you get onto that train in a hope that after some time there would be an enhancement, and from day one you are underfinanced. Now there is a document called Lender's Liability and Fair Practices, which not a lot of people talk about. Not a lot of people insist the banker to follow that. One of the main principles, I mean, the document is a notification from the Reserve Bank of India. One of the fundamental things mentioned in that is the banker has to ensure that the financing is adequate. No unit should fail for underfinancing. But that is not the case. That is not how we operate. That is not how the bankers operate. So, underfinancing starts from day one. Because of underfinancing, a lot of things happen, which I'll come to later, and which are the things which we need to be wary of right from the first day. there used to be every year, right up to 2005, 2006, there used to be RBI guidelines, there used to be committees, there used to be discussions, there used to be talks where industry was also involved, where the focus was on revival of MSME industries. There used to be new guidelines how the industries could be revived. Now we don't see that. All we see is that the laws of recovery being strengthened, the laws of recovery being made to look like a draconian. The laws, not only the laws, the use of those laws, the, the implementation on the ground by various new players who have got into this game. Earlier, a few years down the line, a few years back, a banker, his borrower, were the two person concerned with a bad loan account, with a NPA account. Now you have a whole lot of players. You have an ARC, you have further intermediaries who are involved in recovery processes. The ARCs give it to, there are certain law firms that operate on behalf of the ARCs. And the business goes on in percentages. Give me a 20%, I would deliver the asset to you. I would ensure that the borrower is stripped of the asset and the asset is delivered to you. Then they resort to a whole lot of nefarious mechanisms, which a lot of people are aware, a lot of people are not aware. But then a lot of people, all these people have got into this because the security agencies, the ARC goes to the security agencies. The security agencies people, they are mostly, they work not above board. I would say that they work in a manner which is completely unwarranted and unacceptable in a society which is governed by rule of law. It is completely unacceptable the way they work. So at this stage, a lot of people are involved, financial interests are involved. I'll come to that when in my next part, which is first we'll do credit crunch do's and don'ts. No business ever fails like an earthquake. It doesn't happen suddenly. It doesn't happen that yesterday night you slept well and in the morning your business is down. Your factory is going into losses. It doesn't happen that way. It is a gradual process. It happens over time. It happens over time. All that while you are absolutely aware of it. You know that the business is not doing well. You are aware that okay, I'm losing money. You are aware that this month's sale is not commensurate to my projections. You know all that. But all this while, what you do is your focus, an entrepreneur's focus is always entrepreneur by nature. I would not by nature he is an optimistic person. Thanks. By nature, he is an optimist. Yes. So he thinks, okay, tomorrow it will get better. Day after tomorrow, next month, I'll do this. I'll do that. He never stops and does an assessment that okay, things are not going well. Things are not going according to the plans. So at that stage, the very first stage, there are certain things. I have listed out four. For business and industry, the first thing is never borrow from private finances during that time. The moment you start borrowing from the private finances, the cost of the funds is too high for you, number one. Number two, your focus goes away, completely away from managing your industry or servicing your bank loans. You start servicing that private lender, because that private lender is always after you. He is there, he is omnipresent, he is like your shadow. He just follows you. You can avoid a banker, you can avoid anybody, you can avoid your family members, but you can't avoid a private lender. So, so never ever borrow from a private lender, no matter what is the urgency, what is the emergency. The second, the second mistake which most entrepreneurs do is they take personal loans from the same bank or some other bank against their house, against their other property, and put that money in business, in industry. That again is a huge mistake which should be avoided at any cost. Because the bank has financed you for your unit, for your business. So yeah, the bank has financed you for your unit, for your business. If the finance is inadequate for any reason, for reasons of growth, for reasons of change in credit cycles, for reasons of slack market condition, or for maybe reason of demonetization, whatever may be the reason. If that cycle is not matching up, it is the duty and responsibility of the bank to ensure that you are adequately funded. Don't think that, no, if I go to the banker, and don't believe your chartered accountant at this point of time, because your chartered accountant would tell you that okay, your projections are less, so I'll increase your sales, and what I'll do is I'll increase your sundry debtors so that your balance sheet would look good and the banker would finance you more. I'll come to that in the next point later. But at this point of time, it is a duty. It is a duty of your banker, because what you have done is you have created a profit generating asset. You have created a profit generating asset. The banker, if you remember, all of you, no banker has given you money. I'm talking about MSME businesses. No banker has given you money based on based on the security which you offer him. No. The banker gives you money based on assessment, based on based on their internal assessment of the financials which you submit to them. No banker, no loan document ever envisages recovery of money from sale of assets. The finance is provided to a business, the finance is provided to an industry. The industry is a profit generating asset. It would make money. Out of the money, the interest would be paid, the repayment would be done. We all seem to have forgotten this basic foundation. The banker says, no matter what is happening with you, even if your industry is making losses, you have to pay, otherwise within 90 days your account would be marked as NPA. That is not how it is. That is not what should be, and that is not the RBI guideline. So you have to insist to your banker, go to him once, twice, thrice, write to him, write everything, which I have covered later. Then I'll come. The third one is very simple. I don't need to elaborate on that. The third one is run a tight ship. The moment you face credit crunch, stop any kind of wasteful expenditure. I'm talking only about industry and business right now. Just ensure that your industry, your business, your costs are controlled. Any extra expenditure which can be cut down, minimized, believe you me, every rupee saved during that period would be invaluable for you also and for the industry also. Then the third next one is, at that time what happens, the first signs of credit crunch. The entrepreneur goes into a cycle of money management. His entire focus from morning to night to next morning is on how to raise money for the next day's electricity bill, this month's salary bills, this month's interest or installment. His entire focus is over there. That is precisely the time when he loses his focus from the profitability. You should never lose your focus from the profitability angle. Because after all, you conceived, you worked on the project. Why? For the sake of profitability. The banker provided you with the funds. Why? For the sake of profitability. This is the particularly critical time when invariably almost every entrepreneur forgets or he loses his focus from profitability. So that is the time, close your eyes and make up your mind and say that, okay, no matter what is happening, I'll just focus on profitability. Then the next point I would like to talk about is two people we start avoiding during the credit crunch. The one is the supplier, the second one is the creditor and the banker. Nobody should ever refuse the calls during the credit crunch or from your creditor, from your supplier or from your banker. It may appear a very small thing, believe you me. People who have followed this small principle, they have come out of their debt woes pretty faster than people who have not followed it. It appears small. It has a huge impact. It has an impact on your psyche. It has an impact on your supplier, your banker. Even if you pick up the phone and tell them that, okay, this is it and it's not happening. It's not happening. I'll try and make it happen. It's not happening. The entire circle, because you're not living alone. You're not living individual. It's all a connected circle. Your supplier, your buyer, your purchaser, your utility supplier, everybody. Then, about your bank loan account. First, I've spoken about business and industry, and now the bank loan account. The first thing an entrepreneur does when the account either becomes NPA or the interest and installment remains unpaid, the first thing he does is he starts avoiding using of that bank account. He starts routing his business transactions from some other account. He opens a current account with some other bank, or he opens a current account with the same bank, because that leads to a lot of consequences which we are not aware at that time. One of the consequences is being branded as a willful defaulter, because the criteria is laid down for declaration of a willful defaulter. One of the criteria is this: routing your business transactions from the account other than your loan account or from other bank, not from the same bank. It's a small thing. Every entrepreneur thinks at that time that okay, 100 rupees is coming, I'm getting to use entire 100 rupees. If that 100 rupee comes to my loan account, the entire money would be wasted, or the banker would adjust it towards the interest or the unpaid installment. Do not make that mistake. But again, the entrepreneur has not done that because he is dishonest or because he wants to cheat the bank. He has done that because of the circumstances. The compulsions created by those circumstances have made him take that decision. Then there must be some option for him. Yes, there is an option for him. There is an option for him. Every bank has to follow the RBI guideline of launching holding on operations. Every banker has the guidelines, its own set of guidelines, its own set of rules with respect to holding on operations. Now, holding on operations is basically a very simple thing. The banker launches holding on operations. On that particular day, whatever is the debit balance in your loan account, that balance is frozen. So you can route your transactions from your loan account without the fear of the money being adjusted. That balance is frozen. Then the banker looks at your papers, talks to you, and then says, okay, whatever are your receipts, you can contribute 5% towards the reduction of that amount, the overdrawn amount, or maybe 10%, 20%, depending on something. But if you see at that stage that, okay, no, right now my turnover or my profitability, my transactions do not permit me even 5% contribution towards the earlier dates. In that case also, the banker has to give you at least 3 months moratorium. These are all rules in black and white. How many bankers suggest it to you? How many chartered accountants tell you that, okay, don't do that, don't stop using the bank account for your transactions? Nobody. So there are many other tools available with the bankers to deal with every situation which an entrepreneur faces. The bottom line is, I am saying all this assuming that the entrepreneur is working in the spirit of entrepreneurship and not something dishonest or some kind of a swindle. When you are absolutely sure that the money has not been misutilized, the bank funds. Second, the money has not been siphoned off. Third one, you have not committed some kind of a fraud with the bank. In that case, you have every right of approaching the banker and asking for all these tools to be implemented so that your unit can bounce back to the profitability levels which were envisaged when he financed you. Because no finance comes without an appraisal report. The appraisal report of the bank is done by experts in banking, experts in industrial development. The bank pays those officers high salaries. Those officers are given Tony residences, bungalows, cars, they are given telephone connections, everything. Why? Because they are supposed to be the experts in that field. So always remember, the bank has given you money not because you have asked for it. No. Not because you have given security to the bank. No. The bank has given you money based on the appraisal done by their own expert officers. Now, if something goes wrong, if the business is not making profits, if the money is being routed back into the business, then it's not your fault alone. The guys who took huge salaries and did those calculations, they are also responsible. So don't feel that, okay, I have erred. No, the error is on the part of the experts also. So don't think that you should be the only one to bear the consequences. No, the RBI rules don't say it. The laws don't say it. Even SARFAESI Act or whatever the Recovery Act laws are there, they don't say it. There is a psychosis that has been created that, okay, the borrower, the entrepreneur, loan has gone bad, recover the money, he must be dishonest, he must have done something. That is not the case. You have been empowered enough by the existing laws to demand that, okay, you have assessed My project. You said that the interest, the installments would be paid from the profits generated by the business. Then it is your responsibility to help me ensure generate that kind of funds. Unless you do that, or before you do that, you have no right of branding me something or going after me in a vicious manner. What we see is people don't say this to the banks. They don't write this to the banks. So, write about every small issue. You want 5 lakh rupees more, you want 20 lakh rupees more, write to the bank. Let him refuse. You would at least be creating a, a paper trail which can be used when you really want to fight the bank. Because next issue is going to be how to fight the banks. So you need to have concrete things, the proposals which you have made to the bank with, with due reasons, and your letters, whatever you write to the bank, should reflect in your financials, in your balance sheet. Then you have nothing to worry. I would say the bank, even if the loan has got banned, even if it has been marked as NPA, even if it has gone into the second category of doubtful debts, even if it is a loss asset, the banker will not be able to recover a single rupee from you. If you have been conscientious enough of writing to the bank at every point of time and honest enough that you have not done any kind of swindling. Now the next one is going to be personal account. At this time, I will not go more into personal other than saying two things. Always have, whenever the credit crunch hits, the entrepreneur empties out his own pocket. He empties out the savings of his mother, his wife, and everything, assuming that okay, in some time the bank funds are coming, अगले महीने sanction हो रहा है, पैसा आ जाएगा. He uses that money. Never do that. Instead, I would say that keep at least 3 months immediate requirement as safe at any given point of time when you're facing a liquidity crunch in your industry. Because believe you me, even if you take out that lakh, 1.5 lakh, a small amount, you would still remain, the credit crunch would not worsen. It would still remain the same. The second point at this point of time is keep some money aside for legal fees also.
They don't consider. Advocates don't consider.
Because invariably at this point of time, you would need services of a lawyer. And you should also, because I have seen, my personal experience tells me that a lot of, 15 crore, 18 crore, 20 crore account gone bad. The 13-2 notice or the bank notice is of demanding 15 crore rupees. And when the entrepreneur comes and we say 1 lakh rupee would be the court fee for filing an essay before the DRT, he says, sir, arrange karna padega. Don't let that, because 18 crore account, he could have easily kept 2 lakh, 5 lakh, 10 lakh aside. But we don't consciously think about it. Because what we feel is, kal hone wala hai. Some miracle is going to happen tomorrow. Something will happen tomorrow, next month, next to next month. The miracles, they do happen, but seldom, very rarely. So we should be, in a normal life, we should be ready for things which do not necessarily depend upon a miracle. Let us have a calculated life. Then, on the personal front also, as I said, run a tight ship. That is a time when even every entrepreneur should cut down on his personal expenses also. Start living a frugal life for some days, because that saved money, that one missed summer vacation might be a bit difficult to explain to your children, but those 20, 25,000, 50,000 which you save would be invaluable during that period of time. Again here, what happens is the psyche goes this way. Okay, 15 crore loan, I have money in bank, what's with 50,000? And then I have a responsibility towards my children. I must go and at least ensure that they have a proper vacation. No, don't think that way. At that point of time, when you are facing this kind of credit crunch, every rupee saved would be invaluable, because if your ultimate aim is to revive your business, then this you need to do. Those hard decisions, small decisions, they help you a lot. Now, the next one, the most important part of this today's discussion, balance sheet. When you're going through this period, the first casualty, other than your mental peace and your family life, is your balance sheet. Because you're not making profits, the business is not making profits, you are already facing credit crunch, you would be after enhancement of your limits, you would want more finance from the bank. The banker would say, okay, submit me your papers, submit me your projections, submit me your financials, audited, unaudited, depending upon the time of the year the documents are required. If it is April, May, he would say, no problem, give me unaudited. You go to a chartered accountant, the chartered accountant says, no, with this, the limit cannot be increased. To increase the limit, as per the NAYAC committee recommendation, 20% of the sale, I'll have to show your sales as X. You say, sir, but that is 50% increase. If you want money, you have to do it. Don't allow your chartered accountant to present a greened up balance sheet. Never ever allow him to do that, because it is MSME, it is an industrial finance. You have other tools to fall back on, which we just discussed. The banker is also duty bound to ensure that your unit comes back to the situation where it generates profits. It's not your own personal responsibility. Their experts have appraised and approved your proposal. So the accountability lies with them also. Second thing is, okay, for increasing the sale, what they do is they would make XYZ and company, ABC and company as daters. Those daters are not there. Everybody knows, the owner also knows that these are fake daters, but to green up the balance sheet, they need to do it. Then you get into all sorts of troubles. The possibility of an income tax trouble is also there. Then the possibility of the banker finding it out is also there. Then what happens is, it weakens you. It weakens you morally. You can't go and fight with the bank that no, you have to accommodate me. You have to sanction additional funds to me because the industry is suffering. You can't do that then, because you know that the chartered accountant says to you, अरे ऐसा मत बोलना, वो मत करना, वो साहब है, वो साहब से मैंने सेटिंग किया है. So all these things. So do not allow him to touch your balance sheet in a fraudulent manner, because the real picture, the real balance sheet would help you in many ways which you would not even be able to conceive or understand. The first thing is, it is good for you yourself. You are given a reality check. When you look at your balance sheet, you feel that okay, this is not correct. Things are not going right. The second one is, it gives a clear picture to the banker also. The banker can also help you out, and then you are always in a state of peace of mind, which otherwise you would Never be able. You know that. Last year my sale was 5 crore rupees. My chartered accountant has shown us 7.5 crore rupees just to meet the 20% NAC committee norms, and so that my sanction limit can be increased from 1 crore to 1.5 crore. At that time, that weakens you morally. Then you can't fight for your rights. Because a bank litigation, now the next point is going to be the bank litigations. And before I move forward with the earlier thing, I just missed one point. The at this at that kind of a situation, the banker always keeps an offer before you. 31st मार्च आ रहा है, अभी आ रहा है 31st मार्च, 2 दिन बाद 31st मार्च आ रहा है आपका, yes tomorrow, आपका आपका अकाउंट 45 लाख रुपीज से ओवरड्रॉन है, आप 45 लाख रुपीज मार्च तक भर दो. विद इन 1 वीक ऑफ अप्रैल मैं आपका लिमिट एनहांस 1 करोड़ से करवा दूंगा. What you do is you suck out the money which is there in the business and pay that money to the bank in the hope that okay, I can manage my industry for a week. You were supposed to pay to your supplier, you stop that payment and you think in your mind that okay, I'll pay him a week later. Okay, maybe my production would suffer for a day or two. Maybe this would happen, maybe that would happen. You stop a whole lot of people and pay that interest at that crucial time. That is the death knell for your industry. Because the money never comes. April, the bank says statutory audit is going on. 2nd week of April, he says just now the auditors have gone. You make an application, he says now this is 1st week of May. What about April's interest? I can't forward the proposal to my sanctioning authority before the interest up to April is paid. Again you start thinking about the interest for April. By May end he says now I would require your unaudited balance sheet of March. That enhancement never comes, and the people who were supporting you, the people based on whose credit you were running the industry, you have actually been dishonest with those people. You have killed the people who made you stand. You have killed the people who could have helped you survive despite the bank for another year or so. You've already killed them. Never ever do that. That is the biggest mistake. That is where most of the SME units start facing the first problem. That problem is this mirage of enhancement. Never fall prey to the enhancement mirage of the bank. And okay, that enhancement mirage, but not at the cost of stopping your suppliers. Keep paying your suppliers first, because that would keep your industry running. Keep paying your labor, keep paying your electricity bills, because that would keep your unit running. Stop paying interest to the bank if you're not earning money. You're not bound to. Don't pay them. Then comes the recoveries. Earlier, before RDDB Act, Recovery of Debt Dues, before setting up of DRTs, the bankers or the financial institution would go to the court of law and seek a decree for recovery. To avoid that, DRTs were set up. The bank, under the DRTs, the bank files an OA, then the OA, lawyers like us have made that OA as a suit now. So now the OA filed by the bank goes on longer than earlier the suits used to go on. So that remedy has completely become irrelevant for the banks. But still the bankers are filing the original applications for two reasons. Even today, the banker even if he has invoked SURFACE action against you, he would invariably go and file an original application before the DRT. Why? Because in original application he is seeking a recovery certificate. That recovery certificate gives him a right of recovery from assets which are not mortgage, which don't have the bank's interest, and then also invoke the personal guarantees. Now, most widely used as of today is the SURFACE provisions. So I'll briefly talk about SURFACE and then the IBC, which is newly introduced. If there are some people who have borrowed from the cooperative bank, the cooperative bank has initiated recovery proceedings under section 101 of the MCS Act. If some people have borrowed from the NBFCs, some NBFCs now have been made entitled under the SURFACE Act, but others are not. So most of them go for arbitration for recoveries. So a whole lot of things, but the thread running in any of this action is the same. Now what happens? What is the recovery action of the bank? Recovery action of the bank is the bank whenever says, okay, X money is due from you and give me the money. The bank goes to DRT or the bank initiates the SURFACE proceeding. Without going to the court, they take a possession of your asset for selling it. You go to the court, your lawyer goes to the court, your lawyer prepares this thick a document which is submitted before the court or the appropriate tribunal. He says that okay, he has done that, this has not happened, and give some time, some more time is needed. At the end of it, the judge says, okay, fine, you have taken the money, you have to give it back. So whatever you may submit before the court, the DRT in defense, gets negated by a single fact which he says, I've heard this dialogue at least 20 times. तो क्या हुआ? पैसा तो लिया है ना? In Hindi, in Mumbai DRT, okay? So what I'm saying here is, what is your option? What is your option? Because at that time when he says, पैसा तो लिया है ना, you should be able to tell him that, okay, the banker is asking for X rupees from me. In my reply, I have prepared a counterclaim for Y amount of rupees. Now you are going to decide whether X demand is correct or Y demand is correct. That is the only defense against a bank proceeding. Now again, this defense can be availed of. Why it can only be availed by SMEs? Because I'm presuming 2-3 things which I've repeated often in this talk. One, the SMEs don't usually resort to cheating and fraud. They are entrepreneurs who are interested in creating a profit generating asset. They are the people who have suffered because of factors beyond their control. Assuming all these things and assuming that all these boxes are ticked, believe you me, an SME entrepreneur has the best weapon against the bankers. The first thing is, you go to you have written a letter to the bank at the first hiccup. The banker has not followed it. Your banker has not followed the fair practices guideline, lenders liability guidelines. He has not ensured adequate finance to you. I have seen some incidences where people have been charged excess interest without even the banker knowing it. Now, how does that happen? You know, every loan account, a credit limit is created. A loan account in the bank's computer, bank's book, your loan account is created. the manager of the bank or whoever is the controlling authority, it is his duty to put a drawing power, DP over there. If you don't put that DP, the software automatically charges penal interest from day one. Right from the day of sanction of your amount, supposing your loan is of rupees 1 crore, first tranche of 25 lakh rupees have been sanctioned to you, and over a period of 1 year, 1 crore rupee has been sanctioned. But your first day, from first day on 25 lakh, the banker is charging you penal interest because the man in the chair has forgotten to put the DP. You never know. How many of you have ever checked your interest application by the bank? Please raise your hands. Nobody.
Nowadays it is
After being stung.
Good. I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, nowadays it is computerized, so we don't check. Previously physically karte the.
Exactly.
Check.
Exactly. But still nobody does because we have a psyche. Banker hai. It must be right. No. Second aspect where the excess interest charge happens is, we have seen since 2008 the PLR, prime lending rate of all the banks, has come down. It used to be 18.5, 19.5. Right now it is around 11, 11.5.
Yeah,
Consistently it has come down. The central bank, the central manager, the central office of that particular bank, supposing Dena Bank, Baroda, State Bank, announces rate cut. The branch in Nasik, the branch in Ichalkaranji does not implement it. They are still not. They are, they are still not. They are still not made it automatic. I mean, it's not something which goes into the system and happens across. No. They have to do it manually. They don't do it. So until some officer who has sense of his responsibility actually does it, you are paying higher rate of interest despite the rate of interest being gone down. In my legal career, the highest case of excess interest application which I have handled myself, is 78 lakh 85,000 rupees. Over a period, it was a textile account from Bhiwandi from 2001 to 2012. Over a period of 11 years, that account was charged, excess charged 78 lakh rupees.
अभी interest के ऊपर interest भी है.
Yes. So, be very particular about checking the interest which is charged by your banker. Get it checked from some professionals, your chartered accountant. There are certain agencies which work in this field. A few rupees spent on them would always keep you in good state. So, I was on to what exactly needs to be done when the banker initiates the recovery proceeding. Counterclaim standing against the bank is your only defense, because otherwise everything would come down to delaying tactics. You can delay the end. You cannot prevent the end unless you are there in front of the banker with your own set of claim. Now, during this recovery proceedings, whether it is, earlier, a lot of people even today had an opinion that in recovery proceedings under section 101 of MCS Act by the cooperative banks, the counterclaim itself is not maintainable. But now, for the past, say, 4-5 years, a lot of people have started filing it. A lot of those matters are at present at the adjudicatory stage, and some of them have reached the higher forums also. So that issue is not yet fully decided, but there is no harm in trying. You must be there before whichever is the adjudicating authority. Now, talking about SURFACE. SURFACE, the precondition for issuing the notice under 13(2) of the SURFACE Act, the precondition is two preconditions. One, your account should have been marked as an NPA, and the second one is a recall notice should have been issued to you. Most of the times, both the things are wrong. The marking of the account as NPA is a much neglected subject. It is done without any application of mind by most of the bankers. A borrower accepts it. Some lawyers who challenge it only for the sake of challenging and delaying the procedure and raising a completely unwarranted thing. To give you a small example, what we feel is an outstanding interest or an outstanding installment, if it has not been paid for 90 days, on the 91st day, the account becomes NPA.
Even for the interest.
Even for the interest. Or even if there is irregularity continuous for the 90 days. The RBI Master Circular itself says that 90 days after the quarter in which the interest has been charged. Nobody follows that. So it's not the 90th day. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is marking an account as NPA. Everybody says RBI guidelines. No, the RBI has given sufficient leeway to the bankers to mark the account as NPA or not. So next time when your banker says that नहीं 90 दिन हो गया है, 3 महीना हो गया है, इंटरेस्ट नहीं सर्विस हुआ है, अकाउंट NPA मार्क हो जाएगा, you can go and sit with him and tell him the reasons why it should not be marked as NPA. There is sufficient leeway in his hand. The powers are still there with the banker. It's not an automatic process. Though the RBI would want that at the end of 90 days, account should be marked as NPA. But the RBI has not mandated it. There is a leeway available with the banker. Try and be proactive with the banker so that you can utilize that leeway for the benefit of the industry, for the benefit of your unit. Then after 13(2), normally what we do is we go to the bank, we speak to the banker, or we avoid the bank, we just wait. What is there? ऐसे तो बहुत notice आया था. But the most important stage is that the moment you receive 13(2) notice, you start checking your accounts, whether the interest application is correct, whether the marking of the account as NPA is correct. After you have done your calculations, after you are sure, then write down a reply representation to the bank. This reply representation is key to fighting the banks. That is the first stage envisaged under the Act, where a borrower is given a right of saying something. Till that time and after that, the borrower is completely absent from the entire Securitization Act. That is the stage. 90% of the people ignore that notice. They don't reply to the notice. Then 13(4) notice comes. The banker, still the borrower is not awake. He says, वो आए थे चिपका के गए, symbolic possession. He's not worried. He gets worried when the banker gets an order under section 14 for taking physical possession from the collector or the CMM. That is when he gets worried. That is when he rushes, comes to somebody like me and says, sir, auction होने वाला है, possession लेने वाले हैं, please save it. At that time, if you have not done all this which I have explained to you, or all this I have shared with you, if you have not done all those things, then at that time even for the lawyer, it becomes very difficult to put up some kind of a defense for you. It becomes very difficult. So what the lawyer does, he goes to the DRT, files an essay and says, sir, it is a residential house, uh, board exams are going on, please have mercy on the children, please, where would they go? He has an ailing parents, please delay, he would deposit some money. That is not a defense. That may be a defense of a home buyer. That may be a defense of somebody who has taken personal loan. That is not a defense of an MSME borrower. Sadly, 90% of the litigations which are going on right now in DRTs are on this line of defense. Or some smart elect lawyer, he would say the documents were signed blank, there is this mistake in that document, the documents are insufficiently stamped. All these are technicalities. You don't need to resort to those technicalities unless there is an illegality and your lawyer is able to point out and represent that illegality before the forum to have a favorable order for you. Illegality is different from technicality. You would see this thick essays, securitization applications, all based on technicalities. In the year 1966, in Ravindra and so, the High Court has said this and Supreme Court has said this. They make this thick documents without touching on what was the industry, what was the unit, who is the borrower, who is the entrepreneur, how much was the social impact benefit of that industry, what would be the consequences of closing down that industry, and what has the banker done wrong. As if the banker is Bhagwan ka avatar. He could do no wrong. So, this is the stage. The moment you get 13(2) notice, you must write a detailed representation. A representation which would raise every conceivable factual, legal and analytical points. Everything needs to be written. Because if you lay that foundation properly, you can fight against a bank. Unless you have laid that foundation, at a later stage when the banker is on your back, your house is getting sold, at that stage, all you can do is, and believe you me, don't do that also, because at that stage you would be robbed by people like me. If you go to a lawyer at a stage when you say, sir, auction is placed, or the physical possession is on, say, 5 days from now, 7 days from now, you will say, aa gaya, bakra aa gaya. You will say 5 lakh rupees lagega, 10 lakh rupees lagega. This is a fact. And वो वहाँ पे तहसीलदार को रोकना पड़ेगा, कलेक्टर को रोकना पड़ेगा, लोकल पुलिस स्टेशन को रोकना पड़ेगा. These things are happening every day. The lawyers, they take money for all that work, and the defense, the borrower, the unit, the industry, the law of land, the rule of law, everything remains under the carpet. Even the borrower is not concerned about it, because the borrower says, मेरे को घर से निकाल देंगे. Physical possession, that threat plays on to his mind. मेरा क्या होगा, सोसाइटी में लोग क्या बोलेंगे. All that stuff comes into play. He gives whatever money is wanted. Please don't do that. Even if you want a time, go to the DRT yourself. You are the best person to explain your own business. You are the best person to explain to the man sitting in the chair. After all, he is also a man. Go to him personally, explain it to him, or at least take a lawyer who would speak what you want him to speak, instead of the technicalities which he conjures up in his mind for no rhyme or reason, just to appear snooky and cocky. So go to him, go to the DRT personally, tell that man, look, this is the situation. I'm not able to pay. They are removing me from my house, my factory, they are taking possession. I have A, B, C, this plan for making the repayment. Go to him, talk to him. Believe you me, you will have more chances of success than you would have gone to a lawyer. Because you know your business better. The lawyer would never go into reading your entire file of communication and balance sheets. And if some lawyer does, go to him, hire that lawyer. Because that is what is needed. Unless somebody knows your business, unless somebody knows you, he would not be able to represent you before the forum and obtain some kind of an order. All other things are false and frivolous. They would drain you out till the last rupee you have. There are so many sorry stories. People charging any kind of amount and for very small duration reliefs. A relief for 15 days, 20 days, etc. So be ready. Face up to the situation. Every law, even arbitration proceedings, you have a right. You have a right of representation, you have a right of filing counterclaim. You must exercise that right. You must call out the arbitrator. The moment you receive the notice from the arbitrator, the first thing you should write is, under the provisions of the Arbitration Act, you should write to the arbitrator, please give me information how many arbitration matters you have conducted for this financial institution or bank. How much money you have received from them. There is a provision. The moment you write it to him, 90% of the times he would recuse himself and a new arbitrator would be appointed. I'll give you a name. Pulin Bihari Das. Because I'm onto arbitration, I just wanted to share this with you. Pulin Bihari Das is a learned arbitrator, sits in Kolkata. He has been named as a factory by Kolkata High Court. The Honorable Kolkata High Court has passed at least 15 judgments against him, saying that these are the elements which are completely unwarranted in a judicial system. He is a factory of churning awards, arbitration awards for a particular company. I would not name the company. So this is all record, High Court orders. So even here we have arbitrators who sit in, say, if it is an NBFC, the arbitrator sits in the same corporate office which is of the NBFC. How can you expect impartiality from him, unbiasedness? Where is rule of law? Where is principles of natural justice? What happened to them? You have forgotten everything. But I would say at every stage you have a right. Only thing is you should know what are your rights, and second is you should be willing to exercise those rights. Then I'll come to the last point, which is
We have less than half an hour. So there are question and answers.
last. Yes. The most, besides all this, according to me, the most important point is this: whether to revive that unit or exit from that business. Earlier also, within the existing framework of law, there were exit options, especially if your unit or your company is a corporate entity. Most entrepreneurs continue expanding their business in sole proprietorship, partnership concerns. That becomes very difficult for exit options. But if you have, along the line, if you have converted your partnership into a private limited company, then always remember, you are never responsible for the debts of that company. So you have exit options. It's not that you who has defaulted, that entity, legal entity has defaulted. Now, for that, everybody must also read about why and how the concept of corporate entity private limited company came way back in England. Please read up on that. It's very interesting. You would be empowered to know that you are not the one who should be put behind the bars or robbed of your house. No, that is not the law. And some people, when I said this, you might have thought, okay, but there are documents of personal guarantee and this and that the banker takes. Don't worry about those documents, because most of the all those documents are security agreements. Those are not contractual documents. There is a huge difference between the two. So don't be worried. Just read up on that so that you'll find a clear way even into the existing laws. And now, since insolvency and bankruptcy code has been introduced, you have a clear option of moving an application into section 10. That's a good honorable way of completely getting out. And again, all these options are available presuming you are an SME entrepreneur and you have not committed any kind of fraud. So, give a thought to whether you want to revive, whether the business is revivable. At that time, spend some money, engage some consultant, pay him some money, ask him to prepare a report for your business. That money would be helpful for you. Pay him, ask him to give an impassionate expert opinion on it. If he says no, close down the business, there are no chances of revival, do that. Don't get emotionally attached with the business. If you remain, many businesses would come. And history is full of such things. People who have failed once, twice, thrice have gone on to create history in the fourth venture. So, but there is always a life beyond NPA. There is always a life even beyond your industry. So always, because you are an entrepreneur, as Mr. Basu rightly said, everybody should be optimistic. Let's be optimistic about it. Thank you.